the fact that people don't vote doesn't mean they're not engaged in politics. And I think, research for the BBC would suggest that even though there's a generation that doesn't vote and doesn't really watch political programming, they're actually more engaged and involved in deep and serious issues than any previous generation no one's looked at. So Rowan Williams used an interesting term in one of his books. He talked about people who get an education, not as citizens or customers, but as agents. He used the word agent because it implies a more active participation. Education isn't something which people do to you. I mean, they open up certain possibilities, but actually you have to educate yourself. You have to do the homework, you have to study, you have to follow, you have to pursue and learn and remember and write the essays. And similarly with healthcare, a huge amount of looking after people's health, they do themselves. People decide what to eat and how to live their lives and what exercise to take. So the same applies to law and order, really. I mean, yes, the police have a job to keep the streets of Lewisham safe. But the people who really keep the streets of Lewisham safe are the people who live in Lewisham. They don't beat each other up, or they look out for each other, or they create an environment in which people feel safe. And the police can help with that and work with it. But you can't say that it's entirely and solely the police's job to make Lewisham a safe place. I think it's in people's nature that they care about themselves and their families and each other. I mean, they care much more about the people very close to them than they do about people in other parts of the country or people in government. But if they can see that their active participation makes a difference, I think it's very motivating. Just because the internet would make complete direct democracy theoretically possible doesn't mean it's a good idea. Well, I think the contemporary internet and the tools that make it up give us an immense opportunity to reorganize almost any aspect of our lives which are about the gathering and dissemination of information and money and anything digitizable. What's hard to take into account is that that applies at every level. So the Prime Minister could sit there thinking, I could have a fat computer under my desk which runs the whole world, but equally you or I could have a fat computer under our desks which gives us a window onto the whole world, and it makes us a publisher or a musician or a filmmaker or a novelist or a poet or whatever we want. So I think everyone has a tendency to see this change from their own perspective. And what we're all going to have to realize is that it's happening from everyone's perspective. So we're going to need to relearn the question of how we interrelate and communicate with each other. And perhaps those of us who are sort of naturally collaborative and cooperative will find that quite easy, and those who are accustomed to having very one-sided relationships or being in a position of power will find it harder.